Hi, it's me, MC of Healthy by George. So let's talk about aging and what can we do to help ourselves to have the best aging that we can possibly imagine. There is no real true process to treat aging because it's a very comprehensive biological process. It's our bodies, it's what we do with our bodies, it's our environment, it's how we think, how we feel. It has many levels, aging does. And so let's talk about it and see what can we think about as helping ourselves to age so that we can reach our 80s and 90s and be fully functional and celebrate our lives into our much older years. So, this is Healthy by George. It's me, MC. I come each week to share all kinds of educational and research components. I've been researching all kinds of things in science for about 30 years. And I love sharing because I myself am discovering for myself how I can be a better version of who I am. So please think about subscribing. I'd love to see you here each week where we can share and talk about all the things that make us the best version of who we are physically, mentally, and spiritually well into our older years. So, why is thinking about aging so important? We don't really truly understand all of the components of the process of aging, except for the one thing that we know we all will get older. But we know that it happens because it's a combination of things that occur on a molecular level. First, it's the DNA. So, DNA is these kind of components of our cells that tell our body how to be in our cellular biological level. And over time, they get damaged through radiation, through free radicals, through how those cells replicate. They sometimes can do it with an error. And this can build up in our bodies and it can accumulate. And apparently, as we get older, we don't repair these cellular functions. There's also something that's called the telomere shortening. Apparently, there's these chromosomes that have a long cap. They divide and they shorten. And as they divide more and more, these become shorter and shorter. And if we can keep them long, it helps us. And so telomeres are also a cellular level that helps our cells keep making themselves over and over again. The other thing is what's called mitochondrial dysfunction. Now, mitochondria, when we think about it, it's the little part inside the cells that gives it energy. We often think of mitochondria as the powerhouse of cells. And over time, they also become less functional and they become impaired and they don't do as well as they used to in creating energy for the cells. And there's also this issue of as we get older, there's a greater level of what's called inflammation present. And inflammation increases as we get older because there's other things that contribute to age-related diseases like arthritis. It's like our heart disease. It's also sometimes our thinking declines. And these are very critical components to our aging processes. There's also something that's called senescent cells. Because as cells age in our body, they become what's called senescent and they stop dividing. And they can start releasing harmful signals that can damage surrounding tissues. So, this is another kind of component of aging. There's another thing which I think is another area that I'm very fascinated by is this concept of epigenetic changes in the cells. And this is how our genes express themselves. And this changes as we age because as we go through life, the epigenetic signature of our cells gets affected by everything that we get exposed to in our environment, everything that happens to us in our bodies. It's our tissue repair. It's like this huge component in our cells that the epigenetic characterization is present that can tell you how you've been exposed to either toxins or cigarette smoke or other things that can bring about a biological damage to the cells. So you see, biologically, aging is quite complicated. But what can we do to help ourselves about aging? There's never a complete comprehensive pill to take. But what we can do is figure out a way that we can help ourselves as we get older. As science looks at these issues around the biological components of our cells, trying to figure these things out. But that can take some time, although with AI, it may take less time. And I think there are lots of things that are being shared about this thing called NAD in the body and these supplements and other things, but there's not a lot of information. There's also these issues around calorie restriction. There is some evidence in restricting our calories and doing a fast where you're basically not eating except for a few days, maybe 2 days, and you do this only once in a while. But this type of intermittent fasting or some kind of reduction in your calorie intake can definitely help extend lifespan. And this has been shown with some animals, and that it can improve our markers, our biological messages of aging. So we're really looking at that as a way that we can help ourselves because anything to improve our metabolic processes helps our bodies clear out that damaged cells that kind of lay around. So we're not sure why fasting helps us with this process, but it's definitely something that is shown that it can be quite beneficial. But sometimes people don't like to fast. I know I'm working on losing weight and refining how I can do muscle strength building and maintain my body strength as I get older. And these are the things that are important. And some scientists think that maybe for women, that maybe calorie restriction is not the greatest thing. But really, truthfully, the biggest thing that we can start to do while research is figuring out how to help us as we get older is we can really look at how we're living every single day to help ourselves slow down our aging process. And the number one factor of what we can do every single day is move our body. That's why my mantra is movement is king, because really it's the key lever to pull is to move, to have regular physical activity. And you know something, it doesn't have to be this horrible process. It can be a nice walk every day. It could be 3 walks after every meal. It can be so simple because that's really what our bodies need is we need to move. That's the powerhouse behind our bodies moving. And that's what we want to have happen is we want to make our bodies move more. So movement is king. The next one, which is another part that I think is very hard for us, is our nutrition. I think eating healthy foods and whole foods and this type of approach is become more challenging. I think right now our grocery bills are through the roof. So we really have to get curious about how we can choose meals that are going to give us those nutrients, the healthy fats, that we can have calories that are going to count and they won't have a big impact on us because they're nutrient dense instead of being full of fat. So truthfully, I think there's this diet called Dash or mindfulness, and this is the Mediterranean diet, and we'll talk about that in another episodes. But really, how we can eat more fruits and vegetables and healthy fats is the key second element of helping ourselves as we get older. The third component, which I spoke about not too long ago in a recent episode, is about reducing stress, which truthfully, I cannot tell you how stressful everything is. I think with what we see on the television and what we're seeing as far as prices and the economy and job market and our own money for retirement, as an older person facing that process, you really feel this big feeling of uncertainty. I was sharing with a friend last night that my big dream last night was I was in some kind of tsunami here in New York and I was locked in some kind of subway car. And it felt helpless and that here's coming the big wave to crash now. Does that sound familiar? And I didn't see a way out. And I think sometimes with our stress, that's how we feel. We don't feel like there's a way out. But truthfully, there is. Some simple mindfulness practices where we breathe and we take time and we do things that are calming and is supportive. All of those things, even if it's just doing a hobby of some kind, like knitting or painting or crocheting or music, any of that will help our bodies lower inflammation and reduce the wear and tear. Finally, the biggest thing that we can do is have quality sleep. I'm tracking my sleep now to make sure that I'm getting 7 and 8 hours of sleep because sleep is really tough and it's so crucial because it's during our sleep that we have the biggest amount of cellular repair. And that is something that has been new to research and that we didn't really realize how much sleep was crucial. It's when our bodies truly repair and rinse and refresh. And I think for so long, we've always thought we'll sleep when we die. That's not the goal. We really need to sleep right now, or it's going to make us die sooner. And I don't think any of us want that. So while we don't truly understand all the components that will help us with our aging, I think what we can do is take those daily actions of movement, nutritious food, stress reduction, and finally getting some good sleep. Even if it means like you don't sleep well, take a nap. Anything to refresh our bodies and help our cellular processes make less inflammation and less challenges in our bodies so that we can look forward to the future that we have and that we're not worried about issues that are going to suddenly show up that's going to give us a shorter life. So be well, my friends. Please think about subscribing. I would love to see you here each week where we can share and motivate one another to be the best version of who we are. Because truthfully, we have this one precious life. Let's live it intentionally well into our 80s and 90s. I'll see you next week. Bye-bye.
So thank you so much for joining me at Healthy by George. I hope you found the information inspiring and that it encourages you on your wellness journey. Because remember, your body, your well-being are a most precious gift, and every tiny action taken daily can make a huge difference. I hope the information here is educational purposes and is not meant to replace your medical care. See your doctor and talk about what works for you. If you enjoyed today's content, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me, and it helps me continuing creating content that inspires and empowers you to live your best life. Goodbye for now, and join me again at the next Healthy by George.